Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Tonight's video features true scary stories in the midst of snowstorms. How fitting for this time of year to describe truly horrifying experiences in the beautiful snow. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. Story number 1. My 3 friends and I went snowboarding this past weekend. Once a season, we go up to the mountain and stay for an entire week. This weekend, the weather forecast called for 2 feet of fresh powder. The mountain was primed for new trails and for us to carve our own pathways. We rent the same Airbnb each year. The B&B is a 2-story old-style log cabin, and it legit overlooks the bottom of all of the runs. It's a gorgeous spot to hang and party. Our first night there, we always have way too much to drink and smoke a few bowls. This always helps us de-stress from work mode and get us in the right frame of mind to shred. Morning came quick for us on our first day on the mountain. Although we were mildly hungover, we were up at 8 a.m. to hit the fresh snow. The snow was falling very heavily when we got to our first run. My buddies and I usually split up and find our own ways. We always reconvene at the bottom of the mountain once we're done. I was so ready to drop off the lift and go. Once I hit the snow and had been descending the run, I noticed there were 2 people nearby. The snow was falling at such a rapid pace at this moment, I could only make out the colorful outlines of their jackets. Something seemed off-putting to me though. As I was riding the run, I noticed that they were not moving anymore. They were at a complete stop. This concerned me that there may be some sort of a drop-off or a tree well. A tree well is also known as a spruce trap. It's a space around a tree and its branches, and this does not get the same amount of snow as a surrounding open space. The end can be deadly. I came to a stop roughly 20 yards before the 2 figures. It was blizzard status at this time. I looked down and ran my hands down a long wire that was attached to 2 nearby trees. It was a long, dense wire that looked like it would be used to trip someone. My heart was beating out of my chest, and I was frantic. Did these people see me or what? I ducked behind a small tree to avoid their detection. I don't know why someone would ever do something like this to another person. These 2 individuals were trying to seriously injure or kill someone. I was able to change directions and avoid any serious interactions with these sick human beings. I told my friends at the bottom of the run what I had just witnessed. They were completely dumbfounded as to why. I reported it to the ski patrol, and they never found a single trace of anything. I'm thankful I was alert that morning. Story number 2. I live in Wyoming on 50 acres that my family has owned for 4 generations. My parents recently passed away and left the property to my sister and I. I'm 35 years old and my sister is 30. We have always had a close relationship. My sister and I were at the family farm right after our parents' funeral, checking on the property and making sure that everything was locked up for the winter. Winter in Wyoming starts in November and goes all the way through March. As my sister and I were approaching our family property, the snow had begun to fall and was picking up steam. When it snows out this way, you can get caught in a blizzard very quickly. We reached the gate to our homestead. The first thing I noticed was the gate was already open, ever so slightly. This is a major red flag out this far out in the middle of nowhere. Consider this. You have to drive down a 4-mile-long dirt gravel road to reach the gate to our property. Not a single soul should be out here at this time, or any time for that matter. My sister and I both carry firearms and have permits to carry. Hell, everyone does this far out in the countryside. It goes with the territory. We proceed down the road and we're scanning the property for any signs of someone or something. My sister yelled at me to stop the truck. I scanned out the window and noticed a dark figure crouched behind the backside of the barn. I decided to hit the gas and we flew down the road. As we got closer, we noticed there were more people appearing out of the barn. My sister screams, "There must be 10 people in dark robes." These figures proceed to start walking into the middle of the road. Good God, this must be some sort of cult. My mind's racing and I grabbed for my firearm. I slammed the brakes on the truck to avoid hitting these people. We can't see their faces, but they've formed a human chain to stop us from reaching the house. We both hop out of the truck, guns drawn to clear the road. I yell, "This is private property. You need to leave or I will open fire." Out in these necks of the woods, it's open season. It's so much like the Wild West. One person moves out in front of their group and draws a gun and points it at us and opens fire. My sister opens fire and we take cover behind the doors of the pickup. What the fuck is happening? This can't be real. I slam the truck in reverse. We slide into a ditch on the side of the gravel road. The truck rolls over 2 times, slamming us into the frozen tundra. Our lives are on the line in this moment. My sister's head is pouring blood and she's unconscious. Fuck. I slide out of the seat and these people are sprinting towards the truck. I hit one and this person drops to the ground. Boom, I hit another, center mass, and the hooded figure drops. The group starts to flee for some reason I will never know. They had me outgunned and outmanned. They disappear out of sight down the ridge. I have 1 bar on my cell signal and I call for help. 911 takes at least 45 minutes to reach us in a good clear weather. I have to check on my sister and hope and pray she doesn't die. I will check in again if and when we make it out of this hell alive. Story number 3. Our old house was on a corner, and in lieu of a backyard, it had a side yard with a small deck that wrapped around to the back. The snow had just begun to fall. It was the dead of winter. I was working on homework. The dining room had patio doors that led out to the back, and we would have barbecues and such back there. When I was about 14, we only had 1 desktop computer and 1 laptop for the family. My brother and I would fight over the desktop. That's where Diablo 2 was installed, so I would use the laptop to write music. On one particular winter's night, my brother had a friend over. They were downstairs doing whatever, and I was at the dining room table on the laptop. As I wrapped up my writing, I didn't pay much attention to my surroundings. I heard a knock on the patio door, which startled me. I looked up expecting my brother or his friend. The basement had a door that led to the back deck as well. Standing at the door and waving was a person. I couldn't tell the sex or the age, wearing a pig mask. Thinking it was my brother or his friend, I mouthed, "Good one," gave the person the finger and they walked away. Soon as I left, I went downstairs to give them shit. To my surprise and dismay, they were both sitting on the couch playing PlayStation. They swore up and down it wasn't either of them, and there was no way one of them would have time to get downstairs and unmask before getting on the couch. To this day, I have no idea who it was that knocked and waved. Story number 4. I went camping by myself in Maine. One night I woke up at 3 a.m. Not being able to fall asleep, I just laid there listening to the woods and the slow, subtle falling of snow. Then I heard a faint hello. I was petrified. I felt so vulnerable in the tent. I never figured out who it was. Story number 5. New Year's Day, 1995. I was in the middle of my 3rd year of university, and a bunch of my friends had come down to visit me and my roommate for the festivities. We were all pretty hungover from drinking the night before. We went out for the usual nice day out, a bit chilly, I don't feel so good, post-greasy breakfast hungover stroll around the neighborhood. 2 of these friends were twin brothers. One of them we hung out with all the time. The other we just met for the first time. He was very normal the night before, joining in the fun, but on this day we were all hanging around a local basketball court, shooting hoops with an old basketball we found in the grass. This twin brother kept following me around all over the place, with the creepiest grin I'd ever seen in my life, staring right into the nether regions of my soul the whole time. I'd back away and join the group again, and he'd keep following me around. When we were walking back to the apartment, it was just me and him walking down the sidewalk behind the group. He moved over in front of me, stared at me with that creepy look again, and fell down to his knees as if to worship me. I didn't know what to do. "Hey, buddy, are you all right? We're heading back now, right?" And so on. He wouldn't say anything. He'd just be there on his knees, looking up at me with a clenched face and squinted eyes, as if he were looking directly into the sun or something. Later that day, my roommate said he was tripping balls, so I thought nothing of it and moved on with my life. A few weeks later, we got a phone call from the twin brother we usually hung out with. Turned out that his other twin brother went over to his aunt's place with a knife and stabbed her 14 times. She didn't die, but still pretty bad. He had even called the police before going, because he knew he was going to do it, but he couldn't stop himself from doing it, because the voices and so on. The ensuing court case was widely covered in the media, as this was a relative smaller community, where this sort of thing doesn't happen on a regular basis. I was reading one of the articles. One of the testimonies was that his twin brother was severely schizophrenic, was hearing voices in his head. He believed to his very bones that his aunt was the devil, and that he'd been commanded by God to go and kill her. So, who was this God that told him to kill her? As a newspaper article described, it was a guy in a group he hung out with on New Year's Day. Didn't take me long to realize that he was talking about me. This was 22 years ago. I know for a fact it was a mental illness, but just knowing that I somehow commanded him to go kill his aunt stays with me to this day. Story number 1. This event took place in the dead of winter. My wife and I live in a very rural area. We are at least 15 miles from the nearest town. Our home is on a 5-acre plot, and our property is dense with forest. Our neighbors are few and far between, the closest neighbor being 300 yards away. We live in Minnesota, and the winters here last months and months. The snow and ice are bitter cold, and this area is not for the faint of heart. The time was 5 p.m. and my homemade chili was nearly ready to eat. My wife came into the kitchen, told me that she had just seen a beam of light way off in the distance, in our field. This shouldn't be happening this far off the grid. Anyone that comes out here is either a friend or family member, and we know they will be coming ahead of time. The police usually take at least 30 minutes to get to our house in case of an emergency, so I have my wife phone them just in case. I pulled out my rifle and took my dog with me to check the field. I've been an avid hunter for most of my adult life and can handle a weapon with ease. My dog Max and I brave the elements in search of the light source. The snow was whimsically blowing through the tree branches when I hear a clicking type sound in the distance. My dog's ears perk up and he starts a low, guttural growl. He is such a friendly and fun-loving dog and never acts this way. My senses are on high alert. I call out and say, "I am armed. You need to get the fuck out of here." I see a quick flash of light once more, and my heart is pounding in my throat. I hear heavy footsteps about 20 yards away. My dog goes nuts. My dog gives chase and this person is running, trips going down a small snowbank. I'm running as fast as my legs will carry me through the tundra. When I finally reach this unknown person, they're screaming in pain because Max has locked his jaws around this man's arm. I point my rifle at this man and he is smiling a toothy grin. My dog has bit through most of the major ligaments and tendons in his arm, and he's laughing. My mind goes blank in that moment as I train my rifle on him. Why isn't he screaming in pain right now? I tell him that the police are on their way and he stands up, looks at me and winks. This man or creature, whatever he may or may not be, walks slowly down the hill into the darkness. I'm all about protecting my wife and my land, but shooting him in the back just doesn't seem right to me. Story number 2. Winter break of 2018 changed my life forever. I am a 19-year-old female and live alone near my university's campus. During winter break, this area turns into a complete ghost town. I chose to stay in town during this break because I needed the time to myself. I thought I would catch up on some work that I needed to complete before the start of the next semester. My apartment is a 1-bedroom apartment and on the 3rd floor of a 4-story building. I have to traverse the stairs to and from my apartment. I have a neighbor that is extremely sketchy that lives right above my apartment. I've seen him on multiple occasions creep outside my door late at night. I saw this man staring into my peephole in the middle of the night a week ago. The weather has been much colder than usual. We have about 8 inches of snow on the ground currently. I work as a server at a restaurant in town, and I get off work around 1 a.m. each night. I take a bus that drops me off about 0.5 miles from my apartment door. The bus roars up to my stop at 1:10 a.m., and I prepare myself for that burst of cold air to fill my lungs. I step onto the sidewalk and the snow up to the tops of my boots. I get about halfway to my apartment complex and notice a lone person walking on the opposite street. I think nothing of it at first until I reach a major cross street that leads directly to my complex, and this person crosses the street at a brisk pace. My senses go on high alert. Remember that this is well after 1 a.m., and I usually am the only one out this late at night. This person starts to sprint in my direction, and I have no choice but to run and call out for help. This hooded figure is only 20 yards behind me now. My lungs are on fire from the bitter cold chase when I finally reach the parking lot of my building. I have my phone out trying to dial 911, but there's no time. I slip and nearly fall going up the first flight of stairs. I reach the top of the first stairway, and I don't hear any heavy, snowy footsteps anymore. What the fuck is going on? Where did this man go? Is he hiding out? I continue to the 3rd floor, rip my door open and slam it shut, and lock the deadbolt. I'm trying so desperately to catch my breath. I look out of my peephole and see a hooded figure staring back at me. Oh my God, why is this happening? I dial up 911, and they're sending an officer to my apartment now. In this horrifying silent moment, this man turns slowly and walks out of sight. I wait for a moment before I walk into my living room when I hear the door to the apartment directly above my head slowly creak open and close ever so quietly. Who knows how tonight will unfold? I just heard a knock at my front door, and the police said they're 15 minutes away. Story number 3. This cold is so bitter and unforgiving. This snow falls without end, piles up like a beast about to devour its prey. This story changed the way I look at humanity to its very core. I was visiting my sister at her flat, and we had plans for the evening. We had tickets for a concert, and the trip would require a 1.5-hour drive into another major city. We set off at 7 p.m. and made our way slowly on the iced-over, snow-laden roads. We had been driving for an hour. My sister fell asleep in the passenger seat. I noticed a car stalled or broken down in the middle of the road. The driver's side door was wide open, and the vehicle's emergency flashers were on. The car engine was still running. I proceeded with extreme caution. I know how these types of situations can shake out. Many people have been fooled by this type of ruse. My sister starts to wake up and is confused as to what is taking place. I decide against pulling off to help, and as I crawl past the car, I saw something truly disturbing. I noticed off the shoulder of the lane I was in, there were 3 figures laying in the snow under some brush. These people were wearing long black robes and had hoods over their faces. I slammed the gas pedal to the floor and fled the scene. My sister was surely right this time, and I'm thankful I listened to her insight. That moment was indescribable, so difficult to put into words. Truly chilling. Story number 4. My cousin and his family, wife and infant son, had lived in their house for about 5 years. His wife left home to drop the baby off at a daycare before work, but realized she had left her phone at home. Entering the house, she turned down the corner to the hallway and nearly ran into the drop-down attic ladder, which was fully extended. Since it was the dead of winter, you could feel the cool Arctic air flowing through the house. They never used the attic. My cousin had left for work hours earlier. She quietly left the house, drove around the corner, and called the police. When the police investigated, they found a short-range transmitter connected to several cameras hidden throughout their home. The light fixture in the shower, the ceiling fan above their bed, even a pinhole in the nursery were sending videos to a nearby location. Their neighbor a few houses away had been given a key by the prior owners and installed surveillance equipment once he knew they were scheduled to move in. My cousin's wife walked in on him updating his equipment, but he forgot something at his house and left to get it when she walked in. He had been watching them for years. Story number 5. There was a young woman named Esther who lived in Lecter County, Kentucky in 1934. Her boyfriend was a young man named Ezra Jackson. The couple were very much in love. However, there was an old man who had become obsessed with Esther. He was pestering her all the time and asking her to marry him. She found him repulsive and didn't want anything to do with him, but no matter what she did, she couldn't get him to stop and leave her alone. He was stalking her and she was scared to death. Eventually, she decided that if she had a husband, he might give up and leave her alone. So she married her boyfriend Ezra. After the wedding, as the couple were driving home, the old man suddenly stepped out into the road in front of them. Ezra had to hit the brakes to avoid hitting him. The old man came up to Esther's window and glared in at her. "I'm going to die soon," he growled. "But I'll be back for you, and when I return, you will go with me." Ezra floored the accelerator and drove off at a top speed, but Esther was freaked out and couldn't stop thinking about what the old man had said. A few days later, the old man was found dead in his home. His body was buried in the local cemetery. He had no friends or relatives, and anyone who knew him had been afraid of him, so nobody mourned his passing. A year after his death, on a snowy night in December, Esther was sitting in her living room reading a book when there was a knock at the front door. Her husband and his 2 brothers were in the kitchen. "I'll see who it is," she called to them. The 3 men heard her open the door, but they didn't hear anybody come in. There were no voices, just an eerie silence. After waiting for a few minutes, they went into the living room and found the door standing wide open. Esther was nowhere to be found. When they looked outside, they found the tracks of her bare feet in the snow. The 3 men quickly grabbed their coats and flashlights and set off in search of her. They followed the footprints for 2 miles along the rough, snow-covered county road till they came to the local cemetery. The footprints led through the gate and right up to the old man's grave, where they vanished. While his 2 brothers waited in the cemetery, Ezra went to fetch help. He came back with 7 men from the village. It was midnight and the weather was freezing. Together, under the light of flashlights and lanterns, they began to dig up the grave. When they dragged out the coffin and opened it, they were horrified to discover it was empty. Although a thorough search was made, no trace of the young wife or the old man's body were ever found. To this day, the disappearance of Esther Jackson remains an unsolved mystery. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. I hope you guys enjoyed these true horrifying winter and snow scary stories. Continue to email me your true scary stories too. The Sinful Savant @gmail.com. I will include the link to my email in the description box below. Till we meet again, stay sinful.